Hey, what's up, guys? Simon Edwards at Pumacom here with Heat Seeker Sports. And today we're going to be taking a look at the NFL Week 3 slate. We took an earlier look earlier in the week and picked out some of the games that we thought might be interesting, but I'm here now to give a updated thinking on the slate based on doing research, knowing more about injuries, and seeing how things are playing out here on Saturday. So we got the slate starting tomorrow. So let's take a look at some of these games and some of these DraftKings opportunities that we can look at. So as we were talking about on the last time, the game of the week seems to be the Minnesota versus Chargers game. Makes a lot of sense. Two high-powered offenses playing in a dome, and they both have weak defenses. So that makes a lot of sense to be the game of the week, highest total on the slate. So we're going to be liking that game this week. The total is 54.5, and the spread is 1.5 points. And Minnesota is looking like the dog in this one at home. So it's going to be an interesting setup for this game. And if we look at some of the players in this game, we can see what the prices are that we're looking at here. Justin Herbert, 7,500. Let's see. Let me get the whole Minnesota too. Kirk Cousins, 6,900. Looking at running backs. Running backs aren't really interesting in this game, which makes it, lean even more towards that high total, because Alexander Madison has not been good this season. And Joshua Kelly is like like second string running back who's just really not that good in general, even though he's cheap this week. Either one of those dudes could end up having a game in this environment, but I tend to lean more towards the passing game in this one, just because of the opportunities that these guys are going to get, and the tendencies of these teams to lean more towards the passing game when Austin Eckler's out and the Minnesota running backs aren't performing that well. Both teams give up a decent amount to running backs, a decent amount of fantasy points to running backs. So it could easily swing towards running backs if one of the teams decided that they wanted to slow down the pace of the game. But for now, I'm leaning more towards the popular thinking of this game, which is wide receivers and the passing game. But I don't really want to spend a whole bunch of money on these quarterbacks. And we're looking at, like 6,900 and 7,500 for these quarterbacks. So I think my strategy going in to try to get as many of these offensive pieces in my lineup is going to be to target other games where I think that, has a high opportunity to go over the total, and I can get cheaper players that are going to give me room to plug in the guys like Mike Williams and Keenan Allen and Justin Jefferson and all those high-powered weapons that we can get in this game, and differentiate by taking players stacks from cheaper games that are on the slate. So let's take a look at some of these games here. This might be some interesting ones that we can target. So Indy at Baltimore, that's not one that I'm really interested in. It looks like they're going to have weather concerns. We're missing Anthony Richardson, and just in general, the Ravens have not looked too explosive this year. That could turn at any point, but just the circumstances around this game, I'm tending to lean somewhere else. Tennessee at Cleveland is interesting. We have Deshaun Watson playing against a severely weak Tennessee secondary, and Watson lost Chubb last week. So they might have to change their game plan from the Cleveland side to cater more towards Deshaun Watson's strengths, which they really have not done since Watson joined the team. They've stuck with kind of that Chubb-centric offense. And now that Chubb is out it might force them to cater the offense more towards the strengths of Deshaun Watson. And if that happens this week against Tennessee's defense, Tennessee is very strong against the run, and they are horrible against the pass, which leaves a ton of opportunity for Deshaun Watson to make an impact, to kind of have his breakout game. He's only 6,100 on DraftKings for his salary. And we got some cheap passing weapons too. Amari Cooper's only 5,700. So Elijah Moore is only 4,700. Peoples Jones is 4,100. So we have some good options in this game if we wanted to use that as some salary relief to plug in some of our studs in this other game. So keep that game in mind. Atlanta Detroit is another game that I like. This game is, it's kind of a sneaky game, even though it's Detroit at Atlanta, or Atlanta's playing in Detroit. People are kind of down on Atlanta. Like, you hear Arthur Smith getting made fun of a lot. You hear just Atlanta in general. People are angry that Kyle Pitts doesn't get used, or the weapons in Atlanta doesn't get used. So people like making fun of Atlanta, but really, like, Atlanta has not been in too much of a situation to really utilize those weapons this year. And this will be the first real test that they have against the Lions, who are playing at home. And Jared Goff plays really well at home. And now the Falcons come into town, and they're going to be playing in this environment. Now, Amon-Ra St. Brown, his toe is hurt. I don't know if he's going to play yet tomorrow or not. It's likened to turf toe potentially. We don't know exactly what's happening with his toe, but Amon-Ra St. Brown might be out tomorrow, which doesn't help us with Detroit hitting like a high score that we need. But at the same time, Detroit has other weapons, and Goff plays, as I said, like really well at home. So there's still potential of this game going over, especially if Amon-Ra is just in the game. That'll be helpful. The total of that one is 46.5. Detroit 24 3/4 points. So they're a 3-point favorite as well. So it's a tight game in general. And the Falcons' weapons are very cheap, as I was mentioning, and they just look like it could be a good opportunity against that Lions defense. The Lions defense has given up 23 DraftKings points to quarterbacks. We saw Desmond Ridder just last week had a pretty big game. I've liked Desmond Ridder in best ball as well. His week 2, he scored 22.38 DraftKings points, so it was a pretty good game by Ridder. And they really weren't. It was a close game. It was 25-24 game against Green Bay. I think that Atlanta will be playing from behind a little bit more than that in this game against the Lions. I feel like the Lions could lead by like a touchdown or two for a large portion of this game, putting Atlanta in catch-up mode. So we'll really be able to get an opportunity to see what Desmond Ridder is capable of when he's playing from behind and given an opportunity to really run this offense. So yeah, he'll be good stacking partner is Bijan Robinson. Bijan Robinson playing a big role in the passing game. They're playing from behind. Theoretically, it would have Algier playing less and give Bijan more of a spotlight role. So he's a good stacking partner. I like Bijan in general this week. And then we got guys like Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts is getting pretty cheap. He's getting pretty cheap given where we've seen him in the past. He's at 3,900 as a tight end. Now, Detroit is kind of weak against tight end. They've been giving up 18, almost 19 DK points a game to the tight end position. So I like this matchup for Kyle Pitts, even though we, he's been letting everybody down for the entire season, basically. But also, Atlanta is giving up about 26 points to slot. Detroit's giving up 26 points to slot receivers this year. So that makes Pitt interesting too if he's running routes from the slot. Drake London is also a good option in this for stacking with Desmond Ridder. Drake London has a decent matchup, and Detroit is giving up like a decent amount of points to wide receiver, giving up about 15 fantasy points to wideouts this season per game so far. And if we're looking at Drake London, he's only $5K for his salary, so another cheap, potential stacking partner for Desmond Ridder if you want to use Desmond Ridder to alleviate some salary. Let's do a build adding Desmond Ridder in there. I'm going to go with Drake London over Kyle Pitts, and let's put Bijan in there too, because I think all those guys could do well. If we want, we could even take Drake London out for now and just have Ridder and Bijan in there. And if we're bringing it back with someone from Detroit, the matchup is pretty good for Laporta. We could plug him in there, and he's not all that expensive as a tight end. If we want to put Laporta in there, it's only 4K. So we can kind of use that as a base build. I don't want to necessarily like stack it too much. Like I don't want to put too many weapons with Ridder just in case he chokes. I want to put like high probability weapons with him. So if we go get rid of this and we go to the full slate, that'll give us like these options of putting in Justin Jefferson. We can plug Jefferson in there. Let's see. Who else can we plug in here? Let's plug in Jefferson. Let's plug in on the other side. Mike Williams is pretty cheap this week. He's only at 6K. We've plugged in all these guys. Let's go to defense. I like the Jets this week. The Jets are super cheap, and they're playing in a weather game. I don't know how the Jets keep coming in at like 2,800, but makes it easy to put them in there. That gives us about 5K per remaining position. If we look at running back, I kind of like my next cheapest guy on this list. We could plug in Gibbs in here if we wanted to, kind of build more on that game stack between Atlanta and Detroit. But I also like Kenneth Walker Jr. He's got a great matchup against Carolina, and he's only 6,200. So if we plug in Kenneth Walker there, that leaves us with 4,400 per position. I know that Houston has some really cheap options at wide receiver this week. If we're looking at them, you can see that Houston, let's just look at Houston. Let's get rid of Jacksonville here. Nico Collins is 5,300. Robert Woods is 4,400. Tank Dell is only 3,600. And look at the targets that these guys have been getting. If we look at a game log, you can see that Robert Woods got 11 targets in week 1. He got 9 targets in week 2. Hasn't really showed up like as far as fantasy points necessarily. Oh, this is Nico Collins. Nico Collins got 30.6 fantasy points in week 2 and 14 in week 1. So Nico Collins has been really good this season so far. Let's take a look at Robert Woods. You can see from Robert Woods, he's gotten 10 targets in week 1. He's gotten 9 targets in week 2. He's the one who hasn't really had like a huge fantasy day. He had about 12 fantasy points in week 1 and 13 in week 2. But that opens the door for, like a big potential game to happen eventually if a touchdown breaks his way or he's able to break off a big catch here. So Robert Woods is someone you want to keep on your list, and he'll be super low owned because everyone's on Tank Dell and Nico Collins from the Houston side. If we look at Tank Dell, we can look at his targets. He's gotten 4 in week 1. He got 10 targets last week. And when Noah Brown went out, Tank Dell took his spot in the starting lineup. That's when he got 10 targets, and he scored 20 fantasy points. So he scored a touchdown last week too. I think he'll be, pretty decent ownership on Tank Dell because he was buzzy around the industry last week, and then he ended up breaking out. So Tank Dell is a guy that you want to consider too. If we wanted to, take out Ritter and we want to put in CJ Stroud, because I like this Houston Jacksonville game. Seems like it'll be like a decent pace game. They're playing in Jacksonville. Houston are going to be they're pretty big dogs. Houston is, let's see real quick. They're 8.5 point dogs versus Jacksonville in Jacksonville. So that really makes me interested in this game, especially with the way that Houston's been playing. CJ Stroud's been showing some skills, and he's been throwing a ton. So he's been throwing over, I believe, 40 times a game. He's had over 40 attempts a game. He has had, let's see, from his passing attempts, he had 44 passing attempts in week 1, 47 in week 2. So the dude is passing a ton, and that's why all his receivers are getting like these ridiculous amounts of targets. So I like CJ Stroud if we want to plug him in instead of Desmond Ritter. Maybe we take out Kenneth Walker because I still like Bijan Robinson. And let's give it Etienne because Travis Etienne is, I think, going to have he's got a decent matchup. They're huge home favorites, and Tank Bigsby has not really been any type of a threat to him. So maybe we say Travis Etienne gets a decent amount of work. That leaves us with 3,900 per position. Let's say we put in Tank Dell there. Tank Dell, we put him in. That leaves us with 4,300 in the flex. If you go to the flex at the 4,300 range, you see, let's see if there's any options. Yeah, I mean, you could go double tight end if you wanted to put Schultz in there. Not recommended necessarily. If you wanted to go down from, like maybe we say Laporta, Taysom Hill is cheap this week. So let's take a look at Taysom in this build. Taysom is in a situation where the starting running back, Jamal Williams, is out for New Orleans, and the rookie, I believe, is out too. So they're down to their third string running back. And that puts Taysom Hill in prime position to do what he does. And I don't think I've heard a lot of people talking about him. If we go to the check the ownership on him real quick. If we check the ownership on Taysom, let's see. Let's find out what his ownership is. His ownership is looking at it. Well, I don't believe like what this ownership is telling me, but it's less than 1%. So Taysom Hill in this situation, if he comes in anywhere near less than 1%, then that'd just be like ridiculous. Let's try look at him again real quick here. Yeah, I'm only seeing 1%, but I'm sure that number is going to update. But gives you an opportunity to plug in Taysom Hill at a huge ownership discount in a just about as good a situation you can ask for Taysom Hill. And it leaves us with a lot of decent options for that final flex spot. We've got guys like Drake London. We could plug in. Jahan Dotson is interesting. They're going to be playing potential win games. So I'm probably going to avoid that game in general. Unless we hear some good news about the weather. You got guys like Evan Ingram, if you wanted to go double tight end. Jerome Ford has a hugely difficult matchup against Tennessee run defense, so I don't know if I'd go there. Elijah Moore is interesting. You just got a bunch of interesting options. Antonio Gibson. So, like you could basically shuffle around your lineup a little bit. Maybe you want to replace Robinson with somebody or something like that. But this type of build gives you so much flexibility for getting in multiple weapons of this Minnesota Chargers game. You could put in Jefferson and Williams we have in this build. If you wanted to go cheaper at this running back position and replace Robinson with somebody else that would open up salary, you could put in a guy like Jordan Addison or KJ Osborne or someone like that. Let's see how much Addison is. Yeah, Jordan Addison is 5,500. So if you could clear up another 500 in salary, that gives you an opportunity to put him in. But Looking at these other games, New Orleans, Green Bay, I'm not too interested in that one. Denver versus Miami, not really interested in that one. Although obviously, like I'm gonna like Tyreek Hill, but looks like there's going to be some rain in that one. I'm not really sure what the weather's doing in that one, but that one in general, I'm just not really too interested in. Let's see. Chargers, Minnesota. We talked about that one already. The Jets and New England, I'm definitely not interested in. I do like the defense of the Jets in that one. Buffalo, Washington. That's when I'm going to take the risk and fade and hope that Buffalo doesn't go off in this one. That was one that was having weather concerns about the cyclone or whatever, but I think that's kind of tailed off a bit, and I don't think the wind gusts are going to be as concerning as we were maybe worried about earlier in the week. Carolina and Seattle is another interesting game. This one has, like some rain concerns too, but with this game, um, we're looking at what kind of total do we have here? Seattle versus Carolina. We're looking at a 42 total with a 5.5 point favorites in Seattle playing at home. That's kind of why I like Kenneth Walker in this game. But I think Carolina is interesting because you got some cheap options on Carolina with Andy Dalton is the quarterback in this one. I think that actually opens up the offense a lot in this game because um, Bryce Young has not been playing well, and Carolina has a lot of veteran weapons like Adam Thielen and DJ Chark and guys like that. Hurst, the tight end, and you plug a guy like Andy Dalton in there who knows how to get the ball to these guys and knows how to read the defense a little bit better. Seattle's given up points. Seattle's defense has been giving up points this year, so that makes Carolina's side a little bit interesting here. I think it could go over that total of 42. Let's see. So Carolina has, Seattle's given up 22 points to quarterback, Draftkings points to quarterback. They're giving up a decent chunk to running back at 26 points. That makes Miles Sanders interesting. 22 points to wideouts, 31 points to the slot, and 11 points to tight end. So Seattle's defense sucks, basically. And this is a good opportunity for the Carolina offense to put up a fight in this one and kind of carry that game over the 42-point total. I think that you'll see, as I mentioned, the offense open up now with Andy Dalton in there as opposed to Bryce Young. So Adam Thielen has a really good matchup in that one. Jonathan Mingo actually has a really good matchup in this one too. Mingo has not been good. He has not been catching any of his targets, although he has been a full-time player and he's getting targeted. Let's take a look at him real quick. Jonathan Mingo had 8 targets last week and 5 targets the week before. He only caught 3 targets last week and 2 targets the week before. But with Andy Dalton, maybe Andy Dalton has a little bit more success with him, which would make Jonathan Mingo very interesting if he's getting that type of opportunity share at only $3,400 salary. So keep him in mind. Adam Thielen is also really cheap in this one. Adam Thielen is only $3,900, and he has had 2 targets in week 1, but he had 9 targets last week. So 9 targets for Adam Thielen last week. Andy Dalton coming into the game a little rusty. He might lean on his slot receiver there and his tight end. So that would make Andy Dalton to Adam Thielen stacks interesting if you're looking for that salary relief. Let's see what would happen if we built in that direction. Let's take out Stroud. We'll take out maybe ETN, and let's take out Dell here. And let's put in Andy Dalton. We'll put him in as a quarterback. Let's put in Thielen because I think he could rack up a bunch of PPR points. And let's see which direction we can go here for running back. Maybe we want to go Walker as the bring back. That gives us 5,800 in salary for a flex position. So if we wanted to, take a look at flex opportunities when we have a build like this, let's see, we got 5,800 leaves us with the Madison, the running back in that high scoring game. Brian Robinson Jr., another good run. He's having a decent season this year. Mari Cooper, Miles Sanders, if you wanted to add another person from this game. But I tend to try to keep the game stacked thin because we want to target these other guys like Jordan Addison. Jordan Addison's 5,500, so you can plug him into this lineup and then have two of those Minnesota weapons. You could replace Mike Williams with Keenan Allen. And what would that give us if we wanted to put Keenan Allen in this build instead? It's 4,200 to play with, so not as good. But we saw Tank Dell. Tank Dell's only 3,600, and he gets a ton of targets. So that's an opportunity there. So opens up, like a lot of windows when you go with these cheap stacks and adding in like these stud players in these cheap stacks gives a lot of upside if one of these games breaks your way. Let's see what we got for other games. Dallas at Arizona, not too interested there. I don't think that the offenses are going to be firing as much there as a defensive game. Maybe the running, Tony Pollard, obviously for Dallas, might be the play there, but he'll probably be pretty chalky. Chicago at Kansas City, that's going to be another one. A lot of dissent in Chicago. Things are kind of falling apart a bit. So they can either have a game where they completely crumble or they can have a game where they rally. And if they rally, Justin Fields, how much is Justin Fields this week? Justin Fields is 7,100. So he's pricey. So, they're not really worth the risk when you got all these other, dirt cheap options with similar team totals or similar situations or whatever. So that's a quick look at the slate this week and a direction that you can go if you want to try to jam in as many of those Minnesota Chargers guys as you can. So just try to think of it a little bit outside the box. Maybe you go with one of these cheap game stacks in teams that are in great position to have a decent scoring week, but aren't being recognized as that, and their prices are not reflective of that. So take a look at that, see what you think, experiment a little bit, look at some of your other content, see where your favorite analysts are pushing you. And until next time, check out the short videos that I've put up on either YouTube Shorts or TikTok. Follow us at Heatseeker Sports. Give us a subscribe to this channel. And give us a like on the video. Let us know in the comments any cheap stacks that you might be targeting this week, and we'll see you next time.